Okay, so sap green, yellow ochre, and we're going to work on this part where there's greenery in the background. And just sap green and yellow ochre, simple. Round brush, any brush. And let's do that. Let it dry a bit. So I'll let it dry so I can add a bit of more yellow ochre in here. Right now it's just mixing with the green and it's not showing too much. But you know what? Actually, it doesn't need a lot. Just kind of not a lot of detail. Kind of this is not bad. This is good. Okay. 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 Titanium buff, burnt umber, ultramarine violet. So we're going to work on the buildings here. So I'm going to mix burnt umber with titanium buff. I'm going to keep the background simple. Let's add a bit of ultramarine violet in it. And we'll come to this part right there. For now, we'll just paint it this way. And we'll do some detail, not detail, I mean some lights and darks and texture. Bring it all the way down, although we are going to use, we're going to put the tree on this side. We'll put the tree over that. Let's take more burnt umber, titanium buff, a little bit of ultramarine violet, and maybe just with the corner of the brush dab. I'm going to wait for it to dry and then I will adjust and see the value, how dark or light I want to go with this. So I can take the same brush, take a bit of more burnt umber. I'll wait a bit for you to get to this part. Okay, so let's do titanium buff, ultramarine violet, touch of burnt umber, go back, and it's kind of a lighter color. And let's put a bit of texture in here. Go across with a flat brush. Let's do this here. Just my colors are very dry. Now, this part in the reference is highlighted. There's sun here. So I'm going to grab more of the titanium buff and burnt umber and no ultramarine violet. So the ultramarine violet is for the dark spots. And I'm going to just go here, come here, and then add this brown color, light brown color, kind of. So I'm adding a bit more of the titanium buff. I go back and forth, adding titanium buff, burnt umber, and then go back to titanium buff again. Trying to keep this part of the building simple and not too highlighted, but I think we might need a touch of yellow ochre in here. If you still have yellow ochre, let's put it in. That would give the building a bit of a yellowish color here. Yeah, I think that's nicer. So I'm adding a little bit more of a yellow ochre and burnt umber so that it doesn't look like the whole building is the same color everywhere. Just give it a bit of, and it gives texture too. But I'm not going over here. Actually, I'm going to go a little bit so it doesn't look like it's disconnected. There's a tree that's going to come over here, so I'm not putting too much work on this area where the tree is going to go. dab a bit to get some texture. Okay. I use a little bit of white now. The same colors I've been using. And I'm gonna come here. This is yellow ochre, burnt umber, and I'm adding white in this area to get this strong, sunny part. Okay, so for this part here, dark part right there, I'm going to use burnt umber, ultramarine violet, and titanium buff. It's okay if it goes dark, really dark in here, because I can always use, when it's dry, I can go back and use a bit of more titanium buff in the same colors and highlight it a bit. Or actually use this, not highlight, but to give texture. So if you find that what you're doing right now is too dark, that's okay, because we can create texture with a bit of more titanium buff and some burnt umber later on. So that's good. Now, by the time we're done with all this, if we find that it's too strong and we want to push it back, we can always glaze all this with a lighter color. But I think we will be okay. A little bit of darks in this area here. That's burnt umber in here. And I'm going to take a bit of titanium buff mixed with my burnt umber. Just come in here and just kind of show where the window is. hint of the window. Now, let's like take a bit of more titanium buff, put it in the burnt umber, and just come in here and give a bit of texture to this dark color that we put in there. Just a bit. I should wait because I'm lifting the color right now. Again, titanium buff, ultramarine violet, burnt umber. We don't have to go too dark at this point. And we're going to do this right here. And again, like before, if you see that, actually this goes all the way in here. You see if it looks like it's one color at this point, that's okay. You know, and when you're putting the color down with your brush, try to dab a bit. This is a flat brush or bright, and you know, we could put this and then wait for it to dry, and then we'll add a bit of detail in there. So this part right now, I shouldn't be working too much on it because I'm going to lift the color if I do. Should just wait a bit. Right, let's take some yellow ochre. And we have titanium buff and burnt umber. So let's mix titanium buff, yellow ochre, and burnt umber at this point. So anytime I want to start highlighting, I forget about, I leave ultramarine violet out. I put ultramarine violet in there for the first layer. After that, I don't. And then I'm just going to go and give this tiny bit of highlight using, or texture using titanium buff, yellow ochre, and burnt umber. With a round brush, I'm just giving it a tiny bit of texture. Still lifting. That's good. Okay. Again, burnt umber, yellow ochre. Actually, let's take burnt umber and yellow ochre and put it here where the light color is. And titanium buff. And leave some room for the shadow. And I'm going to come down here with my highlights. A little bit more brown. And again, I'll let it dry and then I'll add a tiny bit of texture in there. But before we do this, I'm going to take brown, burnt umber, put a bit of ultramarine in it, and then add the shadow part in here. Oh, that's too dark. Okay. Titanium buff. Okay. So again, of course, the acrylic is drying darker. So I'm going to take now at this point some titanium buff and burnt umber and just add a couple of texture in here, suggestion of stone. And let's see, if this is not enough with titanium buff, I can add a bit of white at this point. So let's see first and try it with titanium buff and burnt umber. I think that's good. Good enough. And I'm going to take now just burnt umber and add those windows that I lost. Those tiny little ones in here. And then I'll stop. I'll pause recording. Okay. Zoom in here. And now let's do the door here. Burnt umber. I'm just using burnt umber. And now I'm going to take titanium buff. In my burnt umber, highlight the door a bit and just highlight this part just a bit. I might have to put some other color than burnt umber in here, but we'll see in a minute. For the doors, they look, well, they look a bit too brown, but that's okay. All right. While we're doing this, we forgot this part. Let's take a little bit of brown and darken this a little bit more. Shadow of the rooftop on the building is stronger here, closer to where they meet. All right. Okay. Okay, let's highlight this part because the light is coming from the from this side, from the left, and this part. For the rooftop, burnt sienna, burnt umber, and titanium buff. So I'm going to mix burnt sienna with burnt umber, because if I put titanium buff with burnt sienna only, I'm going to end up with a pink. So this color right now is good enough for a base, and we will highlight and adjust the color itself later on. So let's do that. We need the base that's dark, first layer. Maybe a little bit more red, or not red, I mean titanium, burnt sienna. Let's take some titanium buff. Should wait for it to dry. It's pretty. You know what? Let's try, because I'm not seeing any highlights with titanium buff. So I'm going to use a bit of white. It's kind of looking mucky. Here, let's do this. This is titanium white. And I'm just gonna, that's better. Okay, good. That's good. Maybe a little bit of, you know what? Let's add a tiny bit of yellow ochre in there, just to tip the color from pink because I'm adding white to burnt sienna, I'll tip the color more towards the yellows. It keeps the brightness.
Sorry, you said yellow ochre, right?
Yeah, yellow ochre. It needs yellow ochre. So behind, in between the windows, we're good here. And here. And now I'm going to add a little bit of white, more white in here between the burnt sienna and yellow ochre for this part. This is really highlighted quite a bit, and I'll wait for it to dry. If it's too light, then I will adjust. Let it dry. And let's paint burnt sienna, burnt umber, bit of yellow ochre. Paint this part right here. And the one behind it. These are really dark in there. So I'm using a combination of burnt umber and burnt sienna in here. Same with the one down here. Oh, I see this. Oh, all right. I see this. This part goes all the way. It's like this. Now, this part is highlighted because there's a sunny patch in here. Right here. This is burnt sienna. Just give it a bit of a earthy red in here. Just a bit. It's like more like a glaze. And I'm going to take burnt umber, darken this window, and darken here. Now this window on top, this rooftop is not like this. It goes in at a slant, but I'm going to keep it like that. I'm going to, if you look at it, it's not straight up. It has more of a, it's slanted backwards to the slanted this way. I'm going to keep it the way it is. I'm not going to slant it. All right. It will look much better once the tree is there. I'm going to add a bit more of burnt umber in here. Just to soften this, because burnt umber is too strong. Burnt sienna is better. So I'm adding burnt sienna in here just to soften it. And same up here. I'm going to add a bit of burnt sienna. Yeah, that's good. All right, for this week, that's about done. We'll continue next week.